All right. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Excited to have you in this breakout session. My name is Danielle Gifford. I'm a senior manager at AltaML. Actually was part of the We Accelerate program. We were one of the participants that helped out with the Microsoft Azure streams. Excited to have you here to talk about, how project-based learning can really kind of prepare teams for the future of work. We have two incredible panelists that are going to be joining me. And what we're going to be talking about is, how these real world work experiences are invaluable, as, things are complex and shifting in the workforce. And so they're going to kind of share their experiences on their project-based work, just in how it impacted their futures, not only on the academic sides, but also their career choices. And so if you guys want to share or if you have any questions, please feel free to kind of put them on the chat at the right-hand side. And even too, if you wouldn't mind commenting what organizations you're from, I think that'll be good to kind of help start some of the conversation. So with that, I would like to welcome on our virtual stage, Shiley and Albert. Shiley and Albert, I know that you guys are, co-op students and you've had an incredible experience with the University of Waterloo. And so we're excited to have you guys here. The next 20 minutes is going to be this panel discussion where we have some questions that we're going to be asking you. And then the last 10 minutes, we're actually going to leave open for some of the employers that are in the room. So with that, maybe we can start it off with, back on you guys, what types of project-based learning experiences have you been involved in? And maybe can you give us some specific examples? And maybe Shiley will start you off for that, and then we'll pass it over to Albert.
Sounds good. For my first co-op term, I was a student with the We Accelerate program, which was a project-based co-op opportunity for students in their first co-op term. I was a participant in the Manulife Modern Web Development stream, and that was about technical training. So I had 6 weeks of training in React, Node, GraphQL, JavaScript, and REST APIs. And through the skills development program, I got to work in teams and complete a project and apply the skills that we had just learned. And following the skills development program, I got to work with an employer for 4 to 6 weeks. And in a team of 5, we got to help the employer build an app that they were going to launch. And this really was an opportunity for me to take what I just learned from a few weeks ago and actually apply it and build something that this startup was going to use. It was an opportunity that I had to make mistakes and to learn and to work with my peers, which is something I was lacking in the past a few years. So it was a great opportunity in that sense.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think being able to, make mistakes is something that's important, and it happens all the time in the real world. I've made a lot of mistakes, but it's good to learn, how to, fail fast and fail forward to kind of keep you continuing and that kind of learning experience. And maybe I'll pass it over to you, Albert. Just kind of the same question in terms of your experience with project-based learning.
Sure. So as you guys may know, I'm a fourth-year senior at University of Waterloo now. So I previously had a few co-op experience already. My most recent one is at HelloFresh as a marketing analyst. And the way my team worked is a little bit different than how a traditional workplace is. We sort of run a 2-week sprint, and my team is entirely project-based. There's no day-to-day task, and you can accept new projects when you finish your own, the things that you have on hand. So some of the projects I got to work on involved a lot of data analytical tools, such as Tableau and SQL, and I worked with one of the managers to develop a new performance tracking dashboard in Tableau, and it was published into the organization's websites for everyone to use, and also became one of the first SQL wiki page managers of my marketing team, where I gather and develop a lot of useful SQL queries for the entire marketing team to use. So even if some member of the marketing team is not very sufficient with the SQL language, they can still query the data they want and performance analysis they want as well. One of the bigger projects that I took on was with a new channel manager, where we worked on launching a program for university student discount, and where I had to conduct a lot of interviews for our campaigns for the university. And the project actually launched September this year. So it's been 2 months now. I've been kept up with them And I was seeing a lot of my friends in university actually started using HelloFresh, which is very exciting to see an idea turning into a reality. And that's just some of the more exciting project that I worked on during my last work term.
That's awesome. It's nice to see like that material progress that you've made, and then actually like having your friends like use some of the tools you've created, especially in an internship. Just like pulling a little bit more on that thread, you talked about doing sprints. Is that the first time that you were introduced to kind of that sprint mentality? I know I never learned sprints when I was in university, but was that kind of the first time you were introduced to sprints, and like maybe how has it kind of shaped the way you approach work today?
Yeah, it's definitely the first work term where my team run in a sprint format. It's a very different perspective, or like a different experience than all my other work terms, because there's really no set work, or you really don't know what to expect every day. You don't have daily task or weekly task, because when I think of daily or weekly tasks, it's kind of stays the same format throughout the work term. You kind of learn one specific skills and just kind of copy and paste a lot of a lot of the times throughout the 4 month. But project based, and especially sprint based team, we really don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
And you get to have basically a new experience every week or every 2 weeks. You can really see the team progress through times, and throughout different seasons. You'll have reactions to different customer behaviors. For example, because I worked in marketing, so it's really a sort of a fresh working experience every 2 or 3 weeks. And it's very exciting. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know we at the same side at AltaML, we do a lot of sprints and kind of practice that agile methodology. So just wanted to hear a little bit more about that. So appreciate that. And maybe Shiley, I'll pass it back to you. We talk all the time about, our workplace becoming complex and, just how things are evolving so quickly. So how would you say that your perception about traditional work or the workplace experiences has changed since your participation in the University of Waterloo co-op experience?
I think I have the perception that the content that I'll take part in school is going to directly apply at work. And I think that's something that I've learned isn't necessarily true. While the technical skills that I've learned and I've gained are very useful at work, there are so many roles these days that aren't cookie cutter from the content learned in school. And I think the We Accelerate program and opportunities like project-based learning help students see the opportunities that are available to them with the stuff that they've learned. That it's not that there'll be a job, like a 9-to-5 job, that's exactly what they're looking for. It's going to take some experimentation. It'll take doing jobs in different industries and fields until you finally realize what you really want to do. And I think having co-op students that are prepared and have this mindset will only benefit the employer, because it will help them get person role fit. And that's really important for the employer as well.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. And we see a lot of the times, I know even with things in my role and teams that I've had, is a lot of times like you're doing work like at your level, below your level, and sometimes above your level. And school doesn't usually prepare you for that. So having these types of experiences is really important, because one time you can be working on strategy or building out a dashboard, or like another time you can be like helping somebody get into like Google Meets or something like that. And so great to hear your kind of experiences on that. And, kind of passing it back over to you, Albert, we talk about alternative methods of learning, including these project-based approaches. What do you think that it kind of brings to your future academic and career choices, and how has that kind of shaped that? And maybe if you can give some specific examples. I know we talked a little bit about like, the sprint-based experience, but do you have any others that you might want to share?
Yeah, for project-based experience, when I think about that, I think that every project is sort of like a small job by itself. So students will get to gain experience in many different things throughout a project, provided that they actually get to handle the project from start to finish. And unlike day-to-day tasks, like I mentioned, like it can get very repetitive at times. Every project sort of provide a student with a new set of challenge. For example, I can talk about the performance dashboard project that I worked on. So that project is not only learning how to use Tableau or how to just create a dashboard that's simple. First, I have to conduct interview with the product user to see, hey, what are you looking for in a product, and how can I optimize your experience using this dashboard? And through interviews back and forth, especially collaborating with some of the high-level employers, like you just mentioned, that's a very good experience, because you get to not only work with employee on the same level, but see how the mind of higher level employers works. For example, managers or CMO, chief marketing officers, for example. And after that, you have to perform a data cleanup, utilizing their data to develop a dashboard that can be used by everyone, and that's easier to understand. And then there's also the aspect of product handoff, and you have to do minor adjustments and meeting a deadline as well. So I think that throughout one project, student might gain experience in product management, customer retention, and or even just improving their interpersonal communication skills in general. And that might inspire them to explore a different path other than sort of what the jobs is initially demanded of them. For example, they might develop interest in product management, like I mentioned, or they might explore interest in marketing, like what I did, that actually inspired me to take on another marketing internship for next co-op term as well, which I'm very excited. And academic wise, because I dealt with so many people and meeting new people, whether understanding their needs and trying to see how their mind works, it actually inspired me to took on an interest in psychology in school, and started taking a lot of second and third year psychology courses. And I'm taking one right now, which is called Psychology of Religion, which I really enjoy at the moment. And I think project-based experience sort of expand your opportunities to explore different fields in one job, and sort of give you an opportunity to really go for things that you never really thought that you might before.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. And it really kind of allows you to get your feet wet. And I know a lot of people that have gone through school and then they graduate and then they get into their job and they thought that they wanted to be an accountant. And then it turns out that they don't actually like, some of the way maybe, accountants work, or they're not really sure that if it's a right fit for them. So I agree with you just in terms of kind of getting your feet wet. And then also allowing you not only, professionally, but academically to look at different aspects or different avenues that you might not have thought of before. So I think that's a really great example. Thinking about from the employer side of things, Shiley, what are your top 3 tips that maybe you could kind of give everyone in the room today, just for individuals looking to upskill or reskill their students through this kind of project-based work?
I think the first tip I would have is have the co-op students work on a real project that has an impact for the company, and not only something that will be used for training. I think it's important for employers to explain the outcome and the impact of what the work that the co-op student is working on, because students like myself, it's very motivating to know what we're working on and why it's important and who it's going to help. And so understanding that factor is going to help co-op students be engaged with the work that they're doing and make sure that they're giving it their all. I think a second tip I would say is foster a workplace setting that allows students to be comfortable with failure and making mistakes, but then growing from those mistakes. For example, when I was working with the startup, I was very comfortable asking for help when I needed it. I was implementing a feature on the app and I was really struggling with it. And I was comfortable enough to ask the CTO saying, "Hi, I'm struggling, I need some help." And I think the reason I was comfortable doing that was because during our stand-up meetings every day, they would ask us how things were going, what work we wanted to do, where we might struggle. And they would always say, if you're struggling for more than 30 minutes, text us, tell us. And I think knowing that the team wanted us to succeed and they wanted to help us, that made me feel comfortable and more willing to make mistakes, and but make mistakes that will help me learn and actually do something with that mistake. And I think the third tip I would say is break down the new learnings into manageable sections. So at We Accelerate, in the skills development training, we learned new content every few days, but it wasn't every day, and there was space between the new content, and that allowed us to understand the new content, apply it without feeling too overwhelmed. And I think when you're an employee, you have current tasks and responsibilities as well. So it's hard to balance all this new education with your current tasks and responsibilities. So I think it's important to give your employees flexibility and different options on how they want to upskill and when they can. So it's not taking away from their current workload and they're not feeling too overwhelmed as well.
Yeah, excellent points on that. I agree for sure with the flexibility part. I know it's something that I see a lot in some of the co-op students that we have, and even personally, having that flexibility, I think, is something that's really important because everyone approaches their work a little bit differently and has different kind of styles. So flexibility, I would say, is really key there. And then, Albert, kind of for our final question before we move into some of the questions from the employers, what advice do you have for employers who are really trying to determine, when students are ready for their next project? And you had mentioned, a couple different projects that you had worked on and kind of shifting from things from like sprint to sprint. But do you have specific advice that you might give to those that are in the room?
Sure. Building on to Shally's point, he said that we should reconsider the flexibility of the employers, and looking on the other way, we should really give flexibility to the students as well. So, for example, I think that it's important for the employers to have a sit-down conversation with the co-op students at the very beginning of the work term and understand what kind of work term they're looking for, which aspect of the business they would like to get more involved in, and how they would like to be managed. Some students like to be thrown into the deep end and see if they can swim by themselves.
Yeah.
And so they don't really appreciate a manager checking on them too much. And if they truly are struggling with problems, they'd like a little bit more space to work it out themselves as well. And other students might like to be maybe managed on every aspect of the job, every step of the way, just to ensure that they're using the methodology that the employers prefer. And I think that it would be useful to give the student one or two maybe less impactful project and that take less time at the very beginning, just to kind of see how fast they adapt to new environments, to new technologies, and their preferred way of learning and progressing. So I don't really have one advice to maybe generalize all the students and how to determine all of them, whether they're ready for a challenge or not. Because, for example, for me, I'm sort of the first type. I like to be thrown in the deep end to see that I can swim by myself. And these types and from my experience, like I'd like to, I'm a little bit more initiative. Like when I'm looking for a challenge, I would reach out immediately. If I'm feeling like my workload isn't enough for you, I would reach out to the manager or even other departments manager to see if I can take on new tasks. But for students that like to be managed more micro, in a more micro sense, I guess they will like the employers to reach out to see, hey, are you ready for a new challenge? I think you're doing really good. Like you're performing good on your projects right now. And I think you're ready for a new project. So it's really, I think it's very important to grasp the student's character and their working habit at the very beginning of the work term. And then everything afterwards will be a lot easier.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just kind of like, don't take that blanket approach to every student kind of thinking they're the same. And it's also interesting to see, like what students really want to get out of the opportunity.
Yeah.
Because a big thing too is like sometimes like you might be in something specific where it's like a project and it's like building out software, but maybe the student is more interested in the technical side, or maybe the student's more interested on the product side. So if you have that grasp of like what they want to work on from the beginning, then you can also figure out if there are opportunities that are coming up, then you know that that might be something that they want to put their hand up for.
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah, that's great advice, guys. There was another kind of question that I think goes on this a little bit, and this is from Cassie, just in terms of how employers can best support students to be successful through their project-based learning. And so I think we talked about some of those things just in terms of like, talking with, the students to see like what they're interested in and like, maybe their type of working style and what kind of excites them. But would you say, is there anything else specifically that you found at the organizations that you were working at? I know here at AltaML, we have like a buddy system. So whenever you start, like you have this buddy and you can go to that buddy for like any questions that you might have. Like if it's like, around like payroll, or if it's like, how am I using Slack or G Drive? Did you guys have any of those experiences maybe that you want to share that the employer did kind of when you were initially starting that really kind of helped you be successful?
I can go first. So
Perfect.
in my last co-op term, the company I was working with was very small. They were a company of 3 people, so it was a startup. And so in my team that was coming in to work with them, there was 5 of us. So there's more co-op students than actual employees. But I think what they did was that they had us work in teams of students, and I think that helped us work together because all of us had the same training. It was all new content to us, and so by working in these teams and having these different channels for us to talk to, it helped us ask each other questions because the teams were based on the kind of work that we were doing. So we had a front end team, a back end team, and so that way it was easier for us to communicate and just get the message across for what we were working on. So I think if you're in a small company, I think it's important to make the teams of the co-op students in themselves so that they are able to support each other in their co-op term.
Yeah, that's a great point. Albert, did you have anything that you wanted to share on there?
I think I have the same opinion as Shiley. Yeah, I agree entirely. And also, yeah, some of the, for example, just to add on to the answer, maybe social sessions. Even maybe after work, we can explore. It's just to talk about the students' experience together will help us explore new paths as well, because we're all from different programs, have different responsibilities, and that might already also help us explore different paths as well.
Yeah, and I think this kind of points on Krista's kind of question too, on like how you would suggest to connect with other students that are in the company. And I think kind of like having these like smaller groups or like having these like open forum flows of like communication is something that's helpful here. Like, unfortunately, like we live on Slack, but then it's kind of fun because like then you can have like these other groups too, where it's not always necessarily focused on work. Like we have like in Calgary, like we have a skiing channel. So it's like we're talking about skiing or kind of doing things after work. Like this Friday, we're going bowling. But I think that's a good way to also kind of help connect students together, is kind of creating that open side. And we've also found, I'm not sure, probably the same with you guys too, like when people start on the same day, there's also a little bit of a bond because you're figuring out the company at the same time. You probably have a lot of the same questions. So doing that, I think, can be really helpful. One of the questions we had too was, what is the favorite type of project that you've ever worked on? And what has made it so memorable? And so I'm not sure who wants to take that first. I can give you like a little bit of time to kind of think about it in terms of a project point of view. But whenever you're ready, we can just kind of think about, what is that project and what actually made it memorable? Maybe it could be the challenge. Maybe it could be the outcome. Maybe it could be like the type of people that you're working with. But would love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions on that.
Sure, I can take this one first. A lot of the project I worked on that I feel like I enjoy the most has to be sort of integrate what I learned in school and what the job demanded of me. For example, the marketing analyst job, at the beginning of the work term, I told my employer I'd like to take on more data analytical projects where I got to use a lot of the things that I learned in my courses, for example, statistic modeling, forecasting theorems. And I get to actually see those models working in real life and predicting customers' behavior or the product performance for the next 2 weeks. And when the time comes, it's actually very close to what the model is projecting. And I think that's excite me a lot because I feel like all the time I spend in school is not wasted, and it's actually I'm learning useful things.
That's always good. That's good.
Yeah, and I think it was very helpful for me to not only push me more in the work term, but push me more during the school term as well, to kind of, plow through those hard questions of the assignments to see, I'm actually learning something that I can use when I graduate.
That's awesome. Shiley, do you have anything to add on that from Albert?
So this isn't a project that I worked at an employer, but a friend and I, we were a student in some program and we had to make a project at the end of the day. And for both of us, piano was something that we were both very passionate about. So we wanted to incorporate piano and music into a project. And so we used a pitch detection algorithm to draw art. And I think that project has been very memorable because it's something that was combining something I was learning and something I was really passionate about. So I think passion projects are always really important for employers, and they just help to make sure that the student is enjoying what they're doing. So I think for employers, if you can help find a project for the student where there is some kind of interest and some kind of interest and some hobby behind it, I think that'll help make the process a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah, I think that brings up a really good point, just in terms of like what is actually intrinsically interesting or exciting for that individual and what motivates them. It's pretty much the same way hopefully you would approach your employees too in your teams, of like what is it that actually excites them and what can you actually kind of provide in terms of a project that would hopefully kind of check some of those boxes. I know kind of one last question we had on here was from Emily, just in terms of the type of feedback that you received from your employers for your project work. And did you find that helpful when you were going through your co-op term? So, and maybe not like, maybe you received like formal reviews, or maybe like you kind of had these stand-ups where you're receiving feedback. Whatever kind of examples that you might be able to share in terms of some of that feedback.
I can go first for this one. When I was working with a company, we had stand-up meetings every day, and as co-op students, we would show the work that we'd worked on before and ask for their feedback. And I think having the daily feedback, especially working in a startup where a bulk of the work is on you as students to help get done, I think that helps co-op students like myself kind of understand if we're on the right track and to make sure that we're actually accomplishing the tasks that our employer really wants for us. And by having it daily, like if we are on the wrong path, then they can help guide us to the right path. And that would not and that would be best use of our resources as well. So I think having daily feedback, if that's possible, or having weekly feedback at the end of the week after their tasks are done, I think that will help the co-op student make sure that they're actually doing what's expected of them.
Perfect. Albert, anything on that?
Sure. I can mention one of the things that my manager did last semester, which was very useful for me or for basically everyone in the team, is that he would create a point system for us for each week, and he would assign how many points a project would be. For example, small project would be 2 points, medium projects 4 points, and large project would be 9 points. And if you finish a part of the project, he would take a point off. So, and every week, all of the team members will have an equal amount of points and be assigned the equal amount of workload. And at the end of the week, if the team members thinks, oh, I'm busy on something else this week, and there's something that other people are asking from me from a different department of the organization, then we can sort of offload some of the points into the other members of the team. And especially for co-op students, like if we're feeling overwhelmed, that could be a very good way, because everyone in the team can be helping you, and they have more knowledge of the organization, and they can help you accelerate your kind of project progress. And if you think you don't have enough responsibility, it will be reflected on the point system as well. So then some of the other overwhelmed team member can then offload their project on you, maybe let you take on part of their projects. It doesn't have to be an entire project by themselves. You can just take on part of the project as well. And I think that's a really interesting way of managing responsibilities. Yeah.
I've never heard of that, but I like it because it kind of creates that transparency of like, hey, like, you know, like I might be working on this, or it might be a little bit too much, but like, hey, like, you know, can you help me? Or I have a little bit more flexibility. Like I can maybe take on some of that. So it almost like invites that conversation where you're really kind of feeling like you're part of the team without having to say like, hey, I'm in the deep end and I'm still here. Like, can you help me? You know, like it invites that conversation. So yeah, those are really good points. I've never heard of the point system, so I might actually look into that. One last question from Krista, and we have about a minute left. So let's talk about first day. What do you expect from your employer? Training schedule, swag. I mean, swag is really nice. One-on-one with a leader. Maybe I'll give you guys both kind of like 20 seconds, what you might expect with the first day.
I can take on this one.
All right, you go first, Albert, and then we'll go to you.
Gone through a few of these, so experience. Prior to first day, students like, first, of course, is the setup of equipment. That's the most frustrating part usually for me, is that because the IT department has so many software to set up, for account to set up. So it would be good if there's like a more organized way of setting students up with the equipment that they need, the information that they need as well. For training schedule wise, the first 1 or 2 weeks, from my experience is always meeting with everyone in the department and meeting with people that you need to know throughout the work term, and gather information that you need, orientation sessions, and also just getting to like sort of get a first feel of what the organization is like. So like step into like a 1 foot off the door. So I don't really expect a concrete schedule or anything that's planned out to me very strictly at the first, especially at the
just
first,
kind of some guideposts.
1 week or so. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Awesome. And sorry, Shiley, we don't have time. We're already at our max. So thank you all employers for coming. Really, really appreciate it. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out. We're happy to help answer them, and hope that you guys have a great rest of your day.